Well, welcome, everybody. It's Nooner with Dave LaMont. It's Monday, and, of course, the Nooners are every Monday and Friday, and in the middle of the week, you get your Almost Daily Dave, the mini version of all of this silliness, and I do have a great guest standing by who was literally feigning bullpen pitches just moments ago. That's how ready he is. I revealed his name about an hour ago on Facebook after our attorneys finally worked out all the negotiations. We'll get to him in just a couple minutes. I got to start off with the Miami Heat. And I'm going to hold off on some of the Miami FSU thoughts until maybe tomorrow. Not that I don't want to give it its due, but I don't want to get too distracted with that game. There's not a lot to talk about, and yet there kind of is a lot to talk about. Because if you're a Hurricanes fan, you've been where FSU has gone to right now. You've been there. Not that I'm expecting any sympathy. But let's talk about the Heat getting into the NBA Finals and a team that I'm sure a lot of you never thought would do maybe more than beat Indiana in the first round. That seemed reasonable. And gone they go. Oh, here comes the MVP. Well, gone. And now the true team with emerging superstars and Tatum, and they're going to gone. Now you have what really is the ultimate test laying ahead of you with LeBron James and the Lakers. And for somebody who actually foolishly wrote that the NBA would rather have Celtics-Lakers, are you nuts? Exactly what my dog just said. The idea of Lakers, Heat, Pat Riley, LeBron, first time LeBron has faced the Heat in the finals, about 805 years in a row he's been in the finals. 6 in a row for Andre Iguodala, which will be overlooked a little bit. But my whole point is there's enough juice in this that you didn't need Celtics-Lakers again. Okay? Unnecessary. So what happens? The zone defense works. The Celtics have no answer for Bam Adebayo. And when they take Marcus Smart out of the game, you might as well have just waved the white flag of surrender. We're gone. Thrown the towel in because they had nobody, and Adebayo leads that run, and that's the end of that. And it was done again. And this time Adebayo had a big, fat double-double, 32 points, I think 14 rebounds. But if it wasn't going to be him, it was going to be somebody else. That's the way this whole outfit has operated the entire playoffs. You bring Jimmy Butler in, and I hope you weren't counting him to be a 35-point-a-night scorer, because that's not who he is, although he is capable of it. And, yeah, you're not getting 37 out of Tyler Hero every night, but he's capable of it. And on nights when other guys aren't contributing, others will step in. That's the formula that's worked. This is going to be different. When you tell me the Heat are an underdog in this series, I believe you. And they are, and they should be. This would be a bit of an upset, because the one thing that you can't control is when LeBron James takes a game over. He can be, still at his age and with 16 years in the NBA, at times literally unstoppable. There are times you have to only hope. The only defense is if he misses the shot. He will beat your defenses. So how you combat that? Well, Eric Spoelstra should have some experience. You know, the guy who couldn't coach because he had LeBron and Dwayne Wade. Are we over that too? Because if you bought into that narrative, you really are stupid. Why even bother being subtle about it? So hopefully he's proven everything that a lot of people around the NBA have felt about him for years, regardless whether he could put Wade, Bosh, LeBron, Ray Allen, those guys out there, or whether he puts out a team full of second-round and mid-first-round picks and a few guys plucked from here and plucked from there. All the right moves were made, but it's still up to Spoelstra to do it. Yes, Pat Riley and the salary cap man, Andy Ellisberg, did a wonderful job with all of that. But at the end, it's up to Spoelstra to put them together. And then beyond that, it's up to the players to take care of that. More on that Friday. So I talked just a second ago with the Heat about every night it's somebody different. Every night it's somebody unexpected. This is a team that has exceeded expectations and is now in position to make a playoff run. I could very well be talking about the Marlins. And nobody knows more than our guest from Fox Sports Florida, the ubiquitous Craig Minervini, who somehow me in between movie sets and playoffs. I don't know how you managed to do all of this, but I'm eternally grateful for your time, Craig. Are there parallels between the Heat and the Marlins?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just saw a note, how about this one? The first time in NBA history that two teams that did not make the playoffs a year ago are in the playoffs, and not only in the play, I shouldn't say the playoffs, but in the final, finals, as they say in the NBA. NHL, you can't use that S, by the way. Stanley Cup final. They're big in
Well,
hockey.
there's a letter exchange rate between the two nations.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
yes, I think so. The Marlins are probably even more unheralded, I think it's safe to say, than the Heat. People expected the Heat to make the playoffs, certainly not the finals. But most people, I think they were a 200-1 shot, something like that, to win the World Series. And for them to just be in this spot, albeit a truncated season, Dave, is only 60 games, gives a team with maybe lesser talent over 162 a better shot. But it's been a fun season. It's been a fun ride, unfortunately, as for the NBA too. No fans to enjoy it with you. I think the ratings are better, and we'll see what happens. Best of three, anything can happen.
I'm amazed they got 60 in. Let's go back to how it all started. I mean, this was the poster child. As soon as it started to hit about the Marlins having this issue, here came all the people out of the woodwork. Well, baseball is never going to make it. Let's just shut it down right now. Can you go back to the beginning of that and what it was like for the people who were involved in all that and for the franchise?
Well, first of all, I think they should have gotten a deal earlier, to be honest with you. They had a lot of July. They were talking July 4th. They were going back and forth. I really couldn't believe they couldn't make a deal. They should have. I think the season could have been 2 or 3 weeks longer. Having said that, at least they did salvage 60 games. And then, as you mentioned, the first weekend of the season, they go to Philly. And on that Sunday afternoon, all of a sudden, the COVID outbreak, they did play the game thinking they only had a few. And by the next day, it turned out to be 18. And for them to respond after that, you thought they were done. They didn't play for almost a week and come out and sweep a pretty good Baltimore team.
Mm-hmm. At the time, yeah.
Be better than, they beat a lot of teams this year, the Orioles, but the Marlins swept them. I think they won 7-1 out of the gate with many players no one's ever heard of. And that really kept them afloat, I think. So it was great that they were able to get back on track. They were in this hotel. It was crazy for, on the road for almost 3+ weeks. Think about that. 3+ weeks. They played home games on the road. And they survived all of that, and I think that's really a sign of this team.
How much does Don Mattingly factor into that and his level to get? I mean, he's an older guy. He's from a different generation of ball player, and he's got a lot of young talent there. What's his communication ability to get his message across?
I think it's big time, Dave. I don't think it's understated. He's got to be the NL Manager of the Year. This team won 57 games, lost 105 last year. Mattingly he did play in New York. But he's not a New Yorker. He's an Indiana, Midwest guy. Everything's right here. I mean, it's incredible. You could have the best win of the year, and it's level, worst win, worst loss, and he's fine. He's fine. He even told me once, kiddingly on the air, that that's what his ex-wife complained about. He was always even keel, and it works in baseball. Not for everybody. Not everybody's like that. And even Don said, if everybody's like me, it would be boring. I like a clubhouse that's different when I play it or now. So, but I think he has the perfect personality for this team, and he's been through the tough points. I would bet, I haven't asked him this, that this means as much, or I wouldn't even be surprised if he says more than winning all those NL West titles that he won with the Dodgers because of the way he was able to do it with his team.
And there are no expectations this year. You touched on it. I mean, yes, 60 games. But still, some of these teams failed miserably in the 60-game series, 60-game season like that. And he had to use 61 players. And what was the number of transactions I saw today? It was either 147 or 174. It was one of the two.
Paul Severino was keeping tabs of it. They would call him before they make the moves, and he had it every day. I think, you're right. It's over 150 or something, including, a lot of moves they made to really help them stay afloat when they had that COVID situation. Yeah,
the strength of this team we kind of identified early on, and it looks like the starting pitching did kind of pan out, especially these ridiculously young arms. Is this enough to carry you in a tight series with a pretty good team?
I think it gives them a good chance, certainly. Sandy Alcantara, I am guessing, I don't know if they've named it. I didn't see the news today, but I would think he would get game one. I think there was some thought probably 10 days ago that might be Sixto Sanchez. The rookie who's electric had a couple of rough starts. So I'm thinking they won't go him for game one. And Pablo Lopez had a great season. His ERA was around 3.5 or so. And he's been really sensational of late. If it was me, I would go Alcantara, Lopez, and save Sixto for possibly game 3 if you need it. The Cubs offense kind of similar to the Marlins, although much more disappointing. The Marlin offense picked it up this year from last year. The Cubs offense was disappointing. But they both don't score a lot. They both don't hit a heck of a lot. think the Marlins hit a home run a game that's much better. The Marlins offense is better, almost a run a game better than last year, but it's not prolific. I mean, they've really got to scrap. They got some interesting pieces off the bench with Monty Harrison with his speed and Sierra. They've got speed with Birdie also, and they've got a little more pop with Aguilar, the first baseman, Brian Anderson.
Yep.
Look at the year he had, Andy. Dave, he had 11 homers and 38 ribbies in 60 games. So top 10 probably in RBIs or close to it. So they've got a little pop. And in a 3-game series, they've got good enough starting pitching and a good back end of the bullpen. Last time I checked, they were leading the NL in saves with 16 or 17. I didn't see the last day, see if Colorado picked a couple. But they're right there. They had a very good save percentage, best in the league. They were able to finish games. They were undefeated after 6-7 innings. They were about 25-0 after 6. And this is that I didn't do the last couple of games, so my numbers aren't updated. But to give you a general sense, when they had the lead after 6, 7, or even 8, they were unbeatable. So give them a lead. Yes, they have a very good chance.
Yeah, it's either that or they lose by 20. They had I found some of the most unusual games where you'd look at it again and you'd go, no, and then you'd open up the thing on your phone and you go, yeah, it is 29 runs. They are down by 11. They are down by 10. But Mattingly's word was resilient, and sometimes we overhear that word, as you well know, talk about when we talk to players or coaches, but I think that fits.
Oh, absolutely fits for this team. Very strange because, a lot of people look at in other sports too, whatever you're playing, goal differential, points for baseball, run differential, and most of the time when you're in minus, you don't win. You're not in the playoffs. But with the Marlins, you're right. If you're not watching these games, they lost 29-9. 15-0, and late in the season, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, they lost about, I'd say 4 or 5 games where they gave up double-digit runs and didn't score many, and that's not a good sign. But you're right; they were able to bounce back from all those crazy losses. It wasn't who the team was. They basically couldn't hold the game tight middle, or when they did, the starting pitcher went out early, and they just got blown out of the building. But they did have a sense of resolve to come back and win, and they had to win down the stretch to get into these playoffs. You saw the Phillies had all kinds of chances with a huge payroll. They couldn't get in. The Mets had a big payroll. The Nats were the world champions last year, couldn't get in. The Giants were a surprise and faltered down the stretch. And then the Cardinals and Reds wound up getting in. So to me, it was a really interesting 60-gamer. I hope we don't do 60 again, but the Wolves were fun. And the extra inning thing was can't miss TV the way they did that.
That, we saw that when my kids were playing ball at 11 and 12 years old, because on a Tuesday night, mom and dad want to go home. Yeah. And if it's 9:30 and you've got 45 minutes to drive, put them on second. Let's have an out. Let's go. Yeah. So there was I had seen that kind of thing before, so I had no trouble with it. Some of the purists argued, but I thought it was pretty cool. Urania, what is that loss going to do to this bullpen?
Well, you're right. I mean, he is mostly a starter. He did not pitch well out of the pen last year, but he has that little electric fastball and sinker, and that's I think it is a big loss for them because he's the kind of guy who's been around a little bit, a little more experience than some of these guys. However, he wasn't going to be one of your starting 3. Right. It may be more of a factor if they keep moving on where you wanted to give him a spot start. And the next series is a best of 5. With no days off. So you're going to have to really need at least, you would think, 4 starters at a minimum. And then even then, if you get to a game 5, you're bringing back that first guy with just 3 days rest. And also you're coming off the series. There will be a break, and I'm getting way ahead of myself, Dave, because
go for it.
Hopefully they get through the first round, but let's just say they do. Their last game would be Friday, game 3, and then they're not starting till October 6th, which actually is my birthday, but I think it's either Tuesday or Wednesday, maybe Tuesday, maybe Wednesday next week. So you're going to have a good gap. You can reset for round 2. But after that, you're playing every day. So I think it's a factor. I don't think it's a monstrous loss, but it is a loss, and he's a good pitcher.
Something else this team is doing better than it did last year is they're stealing more bases. I think it was close to 51 this season, and that was darn near what they had all of last year. Is it just Mattingly working with what he has here, or was that just a philosophical shift?
I think it was more just the personnel. I think it was. I mean, Birdie is a stolen base guy. You got Harrison came up, Sierra, another stolen base guy. I'm probably leaving somebody out here, but they have speed. What they've talked about, Derek Jeter and Gary Denbo, from the get-go is bringing in athletes. They always hit athletes. That's usually an up-the-middle guy, second, short, center field. Great athletes that probably could play a couple of sports. Mm-hmm. Monty Harrison, football, basketball. John Birdie was a hockey player. And Sierra can fly, and he had a really good year. It's going to be interesting to see also the active. I think it's going to be 28, Dave. I didn't even look at that. I know they have a total squad of 40, and I think it's 12 on the taxi, I believe, so that they're there. If you have an issue, COVID, whatever, you bring a guy in, and he's there with you in this bubble. But it's going to be, to me, interesting to see who these, quote, bench guys are. I don't know how you leave Monty Harrison off with the electricity he provides on the base path. I like Sierra as well. Chad Wallach has been an outstanding catcher for them. Will they have a third catcher? A big loss of Cervelli early in the year. I thought he was a big factor. But they definitely have more speed. They were second in the league in stolen bases behind only the Padres, another great young athletic team. And it is part of their game. Tailed off, I thought, a little bit toward the end of the year. I'd like to see more of that stolen base game, put the pressure on the other team.
Who do you like in the National League? We'll leave the Marlins out of the conversation for the moment. Who do you think will get out of the NL?
It's a good question. If I didn't pick the Marlins, it's hard to pick against the Dodgers. But in this best of three, like, for example, the Atlanta Braves have a great offense. I mean, they are a really good team. I believe they're hooked up with the Reds. I didn't put the matchups in front of me. Is that right, too? I think that's the 2-7.
Yes, 2-7.
Right? All right, so the Reds
Cardinals took 5, yeah.
Have Bauer and former Marlin farmhand and Luis Castillo, who was traded in the Dan Straley deal, unfortunately, by Miami, or they would have had another arm there. And that was by the prior management, not these guys.
Right.
But like the Reds can easily win that series, and I say that because it's a 3-game series. Could the Dodgers lose a 3? Yeah, but you wouldn't expect them to. And when it got tough toward the end, when they had a big series, they did the job against the Padres. Remember, there was a time the Padres were talking about winning the AL West, and they didn't. So you got to like the Dodgers. They won 40-something games in 60. They've got to be the favorite. They seem to be the most complete team out of all the teams out there. The Padres, you think, kind of like the Marlins, maybe even a touch above in terms of development, are a little ahead of schedule. The Braves, unfortunately, they had so many pitching issues. If they had stronger pitching, I'd put them in that hunt. The Cubs' offense has been brutal, but they again, I mean, you face Kyle Hendricks. The Marlins are going to face Yu Darvish, who had a really good year. Mm-hmm. And then Kyle Hendricks, who always gives them fits. He's a crafty, sort of Greg Maddox's pitcher, and he's tough. I would say for the Marlins, really big to take game one because that Hendricks guy, he's tough.
Yeah, and there's certain guys that just own you no matter what, and it gets in your head even if you're a pro. And that, you're right. There are guys like that. What about the AL? Anything over there that sticks out?
I didn't watch him as closely this year. The White Sox were, to me, an offensive surprise and had a really good season. The Yankees kind of went up and down, right? The way they went, they had an injury banged up season. They got incredibly hot. They won like 10 in a row. And Tampa Bay, I did get a look at them up close and personal. Boy, they look good. I wonder if this is the year.
Their pitching is really well set. Their bullpen, you talk about what Marlins have. They have even better.
They are a good ball club, probably not getting all the betting money because they're Tampa Bay for some reason. But I'm not so certain that the Rays can punch through this year and make it. I remember when they went there with the Phillies, in fact, some years ago, I think it was 2008, and weren't able to win it. But, in fact, you know what's what happened? I was out in Vegas that year. It was the craziest thing.
Good for you.
During the playoff, Dave, it was a strange thing. I don't know how many people I like to play a little craps and blackjack. I'm not a sports bettor. But when I got to Vegas, it's always fun to put $10 on somebody in the sports book. And so I ended up that day, I don't know what game it was, but I put a little money, it was maybe $40-$50 on Tampa Bay, and my buddy had the Phillies. And what happened was there was a suspended game. It was maybe in the 5th or 6th inning. Where I placed the wager was at, I think, Caesar's Palace, and their rules are whatever the score is on that day, that's the game. So I had Tampa Bay. They were winning. I think it was Tampa Bay winning, and I got paid. My friend had Tampa Bay at a different place, and they were They did not pay. They went to the conclusion of the game. They wound up losing the game. So he lost his, and I won mine. So I was like,
that's the definition. That's what they call it, a bad beat.
I mean, one guy, you get the same team, one guy gets, the other one doesn't. Doesn't seem like it was fair. But, went in my favor.
No, but that's all that matters. You should try. Well, you're busy. March Madness, you've got the Panthers, so you're.
I hear that's fun. I've never been out there for March Madness. I do hear that's a fun time. I usually like to go out for NFL Sunday, and during the after the baseball season. And it's a fun time to see all those games up on the board. You know what's neat too is I noticed the last time because I've been out there with the Panthers a couple of times, and I'm a big hockey guy. Always have been since I was a little kid. It's big how hockey. First of all, is on these big. You never saw a hockey game in Vegas before in a sports book on the. Now it's everywhere because of the Golden Knights. The Golden Knight atmosphere is as good as any NHL, and I've been to Montreal, any NHL arena I've ever been in. A Golden Knights game is a must for any sports fan. You've got to go. It's that good. And it's exciting to see hockey go on the Strip. Even outdoor bars got the hockey on, so it's good for the sport, I think, to be in Vegas. I'm surprised if all four get there eventually. Major sports.
The year they lost to the Caps, and I'm a Caps fan having grown up in that area.
Right.
My wife and I happened to be out there when the series started, so we were walking in that covered downtown area,
right,
just taking it all in. And there's the Stanley Cup. Game 1 was about to be played the next day, and there it is sitting there. And we didn't go to the games. The cup itself, and it was guarded,
Yeah.
And then we were there for, I think they won one game, and then we were there for one more. The Caps won that one, and then we'd go on to win the series. But it was electric, and seeing the people there with the jerseys and the sweaters they were wearing.
Shock you, right? Shocking if you didn't know.
And I've heard that the sound system that they built in that building is whatever state of the art is, they threw that in the trash can and blew state of the art completely out of the water because they've got the people out there to do it.
Yeah, I couldn't put my finger on it, Dave, but now that you mention that, that would make sense. They've got these drummers with lights going on, and whatever it is that they do between their in-game entertainment, their choice of the music they use, the sound system, which I didn't realize, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
I was actually out there for that series as well, and I went to, this is the first time ever, actually, I'm getting used to it now, going to games in arenas where there's nothing going on in the actual place you're in, like our Marlins game. I mean, we've been doing our shows from Marlins Park, even when the Marlins are in New York, and there's nothing. They were one of 8 people there. Well, this time we were at the T-Mobile Arena watching, I think it was Game 3, which was back in the Capitol, not the Capitol Center, but what's the name of it?
That's going back a ways now.
Yeah, it was in Landover. Yes.
Now you're down to
Verizon.
Verizon, I think it is. Yeah.
Right. So anyway, but we were in the Vegas zone. They had 15,000 people. The game was in Washington, and it was unbelievable. It wasn't going on there, obviously, but that's how it is. So it's good to see for that sport.
Well, I'm old enough to have been to the Cap Center when the Caps played there. So
Georgetown, Dave. I did some games there when I was in college. Some great rivalries at the Cap Center with Ewing and all the guys from Washington for Syracuse. Yeah.
You mentioned the Panthers, and for folks who don't know, in addition to your Miami Marlins duties, you're also the host for the Florida Panthers. And what happened there? Because there were some expectations and some hopes, I should say. And unlike the Heat, who've exceeded their expectations, and the Marlins, who have, the Panthers didn't meet theirs. What was missing this year, did you see?
It's a good question. They did get to the round of 24. They did wind up calling that the playoffs. Normally it's 16. I think, obviously they let Dale Talon go, so they were disappointed as well. I'm not breaking any news there, but you're right. They brought in a world-class coach. Can't blame the coach. He won 3 Stanley Cups. I think sometimes it does take a year for the coach to really learn his personnel. I think they're going to be better, and Q's going to have even a bigger say going into next year with personnel-wise. They hired Bill Zito to be the general manager. He's a guy who was the assistant in Columbus. They really like him. He's also got a business acumen, was an agent, similar. And hopefully I think he'll have a much better run than Brody Van Wagenen. But Brody for the Mets also came from that agent background and now is a GM. And Zito's got a very good hockey resume. Not to mention he played at an Ivy League school, I think it was Yale, and has got a lawyer and combination. Perfect. Yeah. Now, going back to last year, look, their defenses needed work over the years. And they had a good coach to do it. Mike Kitchen's a great defensive coach too, the assistant. And they couldn't get it done. And they got rid of Mike Matheson. a guy they gave a lot of money to, almost $5 million a year. Great skating defenseman, not a real tough defenseman, more of a poke checker than a body checker. And it didn't work. Not just Matt. I'm not pinning it all on Matheson. They didn't play well defensively. Too many easy goals. You can't blame. Some people just look at the goals against or the save percentage and blame the goalie. And I'm not saying Bobrovsky had a great year, but I think he was better than his numbers. And I think that's been the case even with Luongo. Going back, and I always point to like an all-star game, Dave, if you don't play defense in hockey, I don't care how good your goalie is. My son's a hockey goalie, and sometimes, over the years, kids used to say, parents, the goal. It's not the goal. I mean, you 2-on-1, 3-on-1. How many saves are you going to make?
Right.
And at some point, you got to play good defense, and it's a team game. They didn't play good defense. They had enough scoring. I think maybe they could use some better leadership in the locker room.
Okay.
And I don't know how much Alexander Barkov loves the captain role. I'm not sure. I would say it's fair to say he's an unusual captain because normally the captains are very loud, outspoken. And he's a quiet guy. Okay. He's a great player. I love him on my team. It'd be interesting to see if they stay with him as captain. If he enjoys the role, great. But if he doesn't, I remember back in the Islander days, Denny Poppett told me Clark Gillies was a great player, was a tough forward. He didn't like the C on his jersey. It just wasn't him. And so he gave it up to Denny. And Denny became the captain of the team. Sometimes it's not a fix. I don't know if that's how the team feels or they like him as captain. He's just an outside observer, but maybe something they look at going forward.
One, we've talked, you mentioned the pandemic and having to do your shows. You normally would be in the ballparks and you are at a ballpark, but albeit a quiet one. Right. Your brother, Richie, is a stand-up comic. Yeah. What has life been like for him during all of this?
He's been telling me a lot of jokes. It's been tough because he's been in a bunch of movies. He's been in Grown Ups 1 and 2 and King of Queens. He still gets his residual check.
Good.
I got one. I was in one movie, by the way. I'm not to divert. I'll get to your question, but it was this Here Comes the Boom movie, and I had a very big part. It was, but it was fun. It was one of the most fun things probably I've ever done. I was a ring announcer in a boxing scene, and I had to bring in Kevin James's character. And actually, if you've never seen the movie or your viewers, it's really a pretty good movie. Henry Winkler was in it, Boss Rutan. A family could watch it, and it's called Here Comes the Boom. And I have a little bit scene in it, but it was really a lot of fun. I used to be a ring announcer. I don't know if you remember this guy, Dave. I always liked ring announcers. He wasn't the biggest, but he was on networks. He did a lot of the USA Network fights back in the 80s when Al Albert would do it with Sean Blaney. And the ring announcer was a guy named Ed Darien.
Oh, I don't remember Ed. I thought you were going to say Jimmy Lennon there for a second.
Oh, no, everybody knows Jimmy Lennon.
Right.
Ed Darien would come on with his little, ruffled shirt and a ruffled collar. And he had that. And he would. Every fighter you'd think was the nicest, sweetest. This fine young man, comes to us from Attica prison. This young gentleman tips the scales, and the promoters used to go, he doesn't tip the scales, Ed. He weighs this fine pugilist. And he was known for doing the name of the guy twice. So it'd be, and here he is fighting out of the blue corner, Johnny Jackson. Jackson. That was his kind of his shtick. So I basically, to myself, I was doing an Ed Darien in this movie.
Nice.
It was a kick to me, ladies and gentlemen, this young man, he's like, Kevin James is basically my age. He's like 2 years younger. This young man.
Well, hey, you got paid. You're still getting paid.
Anyway, back to your question. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay, because you brought up something that now I'm going to have another question for you when you're done talking about Richie.
I'll give you that one. And that is Richie's been, Richie works the cruises, my brother. He's been a very successful comedian, but it's been a little quiet. He did a couple of gigs across the coast over in Port Charlotte. I think he's got one in Vero coming up. And he went out to Idaho where my sister lives, do a gig there. But, when people not allowed to go to comedy clubs or not out, obviously the comedians, they're considered, as he jokes about it, I'm non-essential. And, it's unfortunate really for that, but hopefully that'll pick back up again. He's a funny guy. You can look him up on YouTube. He's got some good stuff.
You mentioned ring announcers, and for a second, I thought you were going to, may he rest in peace, the great Howard Finkel. Of course, people who remember, you had a stint with Vince McMahon in his early in your life, and Howard Finkel is.
Wait a minute, Dave. Just hang on one second.
I will. Wait a minute. We're going to get a Howard Finkel piece of memorabilia here.
Oh, wait. I thought I had my jacket here. Where is my jacket? I think I have it in the other closet.
That's all right.
I have my WWF jacket. But since we're casual on this show, right?
Very.
All right, so let me show you a couple of fun shots here.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if what you can see or not because it's hard to angle this. Tell me which way I got to go in this. That way?
Well, I would go a little bit
You see Hogan
to
there?
the left.
Why is
I
it
see
so
your
hard?
computer. You're kind of a glare there. There we go.
Is Hogan there or no?
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
hard to see?
It's a little hard because the computer it's like when
Oh,
you
it's
take a
the glare.
picture of yourself.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, the glare.
Oh, anyway, all right. You can't. Maybe it's better from further away. Yeah, but anyway, there's a Hogan shot. That's what Hulk. This is crazy how tricky that is. It must be the angle, Dave.
That's why we talk for a living and we don't point the
I
camera.
know. See, I'm not technical. Where's my camera guy?
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
we have the great. This is if I ever could get the shot on it. No, you can't. This is bad TV. But anyway, there's there's George the Animal Steel up there.
His name was up on that bar in Hollywood till I think they've redone it. Nick's.
Oh, you see that shot there, Dave? You can see it a little bit right there.
Yeah, in the middle for the folks in the middle because I recognize George.
Okay, so this is a funny shot because George, who's a very funny guy, used to eat the turnbuckle. So he goes to the cameraman, he puts his hand on my back of my head, and he goes, "Hey, shoot on 3." I'm like, "All right." So 1, 2, 3 on 3, Dave. He rips the back of my hair as hard as you possibly could. I mean, you could not pull my hair harder.
Ooh.
So that reaction for me is a legitimate but it makes for a funny picture.
But it's George the Animal Steel, who was also a legend in his own right.
A legend, absolute legend. There's
there's so many stories about those guys.
That's Soupy Sales from the comedy days, comedy club. Remember Soupy Sales?
Wow! Did you send him $1 when you were a kid?
No, I
You got
should
in big
have,
trouble for
yeah.
that one.
And then the other one, of course, the great Jack Buck.
Oh God, I got to meet him and interview he and Hank Stram.
That's just a few there, but and then the Hogan one was funny too because Dave, we were on a boat doing a little Coliseum video, they called it, and so we're in the back of a small boat. I'm sitting on the same level, kind of sitting on top of the seat, and so Hogan goes, "Hey brother," now Hogan's 6'6", right? I'm 5'10", maybe. Brother, would you mind sitting down? I'm looking at him like, you want me to go lower? Yeah. So now I am, instead of being on the same level looking up at him, now I am 3 more feet lower. Really looking up. That's what that picture is. It's so funny. Look at my head. You would never do something like that. You can see it in the distance there. Anyway, it made for a funny photo too, but I mean, the guy is 6'6". Was he not big enough? How big do you want to be?
I know. That's the funny thing is I saw him a couple of times in person and you sort of forget.
Oh, yeah.
And then you realize how big Andre the Giant was because you see the two of them together when they wrestled a couple of times.
Oh, yeah.
And the size difference, if anybody thought they were faking it with Andre, no.
I worked with Andre. He put his hand in front of my face, Dave. He would cover me from the top of my head. Seriously, I'm not kidding. Over my chin. I mean, that's how big his hand. Each finger was about that. I am serious, too.
Yeah.
And, he would drink a bottle of wine like you drink a tiny little shot. I mean, it was unbelievable. But he was a very nice man, and I got to work with him quite a bit. When my days there, my timing was good in terms of wrestling was just getting hot. And but, yeah, there's some characters.
Yeah. Well, I thought the Andre documentary was great.
Yes.
And I've heard a lot of, that if he was your friend, he was your friend. And if, by God, he didn't like you, you might as well just leave the country and don't ever come back. Go into witness protection.
Yes. I remember one time I was doing a shoot with him. And it's not somebody I would party with per se or go out and have a.
Oh, you'd be dead if you tried that.
Have a beer with, but you'd see. But he was always very friendly to me, and I did interviews with him, and he was always nice, very nice. I mean, a gentleman most of the time. But one time I was doing an interview with him there was a show. We used to go locally to Boston Garden, MSG, and Philly and the Spectrum. Mm-hmm. And on those 3 places, once a month, they would air the show only on their market. It would be on Prism, which was the Flyers and Sixers outlet, Phillies, MSG Network, and in Nesson in New England. And it would be just the Boston Garden wrestling card. Nobody else would see it. And the one we were at the Spectrum in Philly, and I was be there and doing the color because the play-by-play guy was not a WWF guy. He was a local announcer. He didn't know what was going on in the storyline.
Oh,
I would be there to do that and then do the interviews. So I'm doing an interview with Andre, and my arm is way up, like this. He's 7'4" or whatever. And I thought he was done speaking. And so at the time, he felt, I'm waiting. You know how better than anybody that silence on TV or radio. It feels like it's an hour
Forever.
So I bring the mic down to ask my next question, and he grabs my arm with his left hand. I'm not finished talking yet. And as that went with the left arm with the mic, his right elbow.
Oh no!
Was not planned. Didn't know it was coming. Now, I didn't have to go to the hospital. I'm not saying that, but it did knock the wind out of me for a quick moment. One of those. And Andre the Giant elbow. But now it's a good story. It's a little remember, so
no. Listen, that's all part of the rich tapestry of some of the characters you run into in your life, to say the least.
Yeah.
Craig, I thank you so much for all of this. This has been so entertaining to go through all of that, particularly your insight on the Marlins. Do you have any role here on any of the telecasts?
Yeah, so we're I'll give it a little plug on Fox Sports Florida. We're going to do a pregame show, which I'm excited about, and the postgame. So you'll watch the game. I think it's going to wind up being on ABC. It's going to ESPN production. I think it's going to be it's Wednesday's first game's at 2:00 in the afternoon. They all could wind up being there at a 2:00 time slot.
Right.
Marlins. We don't know yet for sure, but so we'll come on. I would assume, I don't know if it's an hour or a half hour. I'll assume it's 1:30 on Wednesday. And then as soon as the game is over, flip over to us. We're going to have our team in there, Tommy Hutton and Jeff Nelson. I think Gabby Sanchez will be in it, JP Arancibia, maybe some surprise guests too. So we'll be doing the pre and post game on Fox Sports Florida. You can follow me at Craig Minervini on Twitter or Instagram as well. Most of the stuff I put on is on Twitter. Should be a good series. They got a shot, Dave. And boy, if you and I talked before the season, we both say they won 57 games last year. So you got a shot, at least to make it interesting. It's already a great year.
Name another team that is perfect in the playoffs. 2 for 2.
Boy,
another team in Major League history.
I was going to say, I don't think there's anybody. Yeah. That's going to be hard to repeat, I think, because they are ahead. To me, they're ahead of schedule. But they're It's great for the future, I think, for fans. More than anything, Dave, the biggest thing is baseball's got to grow. We're both baseball fans. We know how great the game is. It's gone like this down here. And that's sad if you like baseball. So the best thing about this to me is a Marlin fan can believe in this ownership. They see it right in front of their eyes, and it's only going to get better. You have to have starting pitching. They have that. So I'm excited for the future almost more than I am for this little playoff, although it's going to be great.
Yeah. Craig, again, thank you, buddy. Have great shows. Enjoy yourself. We'll talk to you again. Craig Minervini from Fox Sports Florida. You see him hosting the Miami Marlins, the Florida Panthers, and I don't know, movies. He's just.
Here comes the boom. Make sure you see it.
That sounds like something you would have said as a wrestling announcer.
I get 40 more cents if you watch it.
Okay, well then you know what? I'm going. Is it on any streaming service? Am I going
to? Yeah, I just got a residual check for like $8.
Kevin James, come on, it's going to be popular. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. That'll wrap it up for the Nooner with Dave LaMont. Subscribe to YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. I'm everywhere and nowhere at the same time. For my guest, Craig Minervini, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.